Hello, and welcome. So, just a quick little, video that I'm about to do. This is to explain the build that I was theory crafting, which I nicknamed the Lich King when I was actually doing this build that I'm theory crafting at the moment. And if you're not sure what I'm talking about, the link is in my playlist, and it is gonna be made available in the description below. So do a little bit of that. Alright, cool. Whoops. Pretty sure. Okay. Just making sure I did this right. Okay, so if you didn't catch what I just said, the beginning of this is going to be a little bit kind of unscripted, but this is going to be a little bit of an explanation of my build that I am theory crafting. And if you want to see a minor gameplay of early Nightmare Dungeons I was playing, their link will be in the description of this video. So, loosely, I wanted a darkness build for the most part, and also I wanted to combine it with ice. And what better than that is to think of the Lich Queen that was in World of Warcraft. I do not know much about it, except he's a knight with a infamous sword or something. But here it goes. Some of the aspects are actually, you have a little bit of wiggle room if you want to play my exact play style. Some of them are actually required, and unless otherwise mentioned, some of them I will mention which ones are required for my build. First off, the weapon. Required. Bloodless Scream. Your darkness skills chills enemies for up to... Your darkness skills chill enemies for up to 40%. Lucky Hit. Your darkness skills have up to 100 chance to generate additional essence against frozen targets. Boots. Depending on how you want to do this, I personally run Graves of the Empty Tomb. Create desecrated ground beneath your sever specters as they travel, damaging enemies for whatever range, shadow damage over 2 seconds. This is the preferred boot I normally run because I want to lay as much darkness on the ground as possible. Therefore, all my darkness that is on the ground is also causing ice damage to enemies that run across it. You can opt for a boot that also helps you chill enemies as you walk. I don't remember exactly what the boot is called, but there is that. Honestly, I don't know if that would work. I haven't tried. Armor piece. This is kind of up to debate. Personally, just as long as I have a way to put up a barrier, it's fine. So you have a little bit of wiggle room on where to put it, minus the boots or the gauntlets. Speaking of gauntlets, gauntlets of choice is the Frostburn gauntlets. Lucky Hit up to 5% chance to restore 10.5% primary resource. Lucky Hit up to 24% chance to freeze enemies for 2 seconds. It goes in hand with the Bloodless Scream, which is why the Bloodless Scream is a mandatory weapon. And Frostburns is also mandatory, so those are kind of not negotiable for this setup for me. Chest piece, I have blighted, defiled area when spawn pulls enemies around the affected area. You have a little bit of wiggle room with this. The purpose of blighted is because when I cause sever attacks, I want them to have a chance of causing a blight to show up and suck in the enemies that are close. It kind of acts like corpse spine or corpse something, whatever, minus having to use corpse tendrils. That's what it was, corpse tendrils. Oh, speaking of which, all my armor are equipped with emeralds, and I'll get to that later. For my helmets, currently, this aspect is also a little bit of wiggle room, depending on where you can put it. Blood mist triggers corpse explosions on surrounding corpses. When blood mist detonates a corpse, its cooldown is reduced by whatever second. So as long as you have, though, blood mist is going to be kind of your get out free card, your card for luring a good amount of enemies to freeze up so that when you detonate corpses, the enemies that are following you get frozen. And then it's also a little bit of mobility if you need it. Amulet. This has a little bit of wiggle room depending on where you want to put it. Critical strikes from Sever have a 24% chance to spawn a pool of blight underneath the target that deals 76 bonus damage. Obviously, it's not the best roll, but but that's the aspect I have on that. I should also mention, to play my specific build, it's also gonna be very hard because it's also up to RNG on how you get your stuff. During part of my gameplay, I was casting curses. I actually have no points in curses and managed to find an amulet that gives +1 to all curses. So that's the only way I was able to have curses in my inventory. And I'll get into points later. Thorns damage dealt has 32 chance to deal damage to all enemies around you. This is a little bit of wiggle room here, depending on how you have your setup. For me in particular, I was very fortunate to have an amulet that has +1 to all curses. Otherwise, I would drop that Thorns aspect in my build altogether, and I'll get to that later on. That's the other reason why I have emeralds in my armor pieces to up my Thorns damage. Next one, you deal 106% increased damage for 6 seconds after Shadow Blight. Key passive damages enemy 10 times. So with all the shadow damage I'm dealing / ice damage I'm dealing, as long as there's a lot of shadow damage on the ground that enemies are taking, it should proc Shadow Blight very quickly and repeatedly very fast, so you keep a good amount of uptime on increased amount of damage. Moving on, Book of the Dead. For this one, I chose Reaper as well as Sacrificed. You deal 15% increased damage Shadow. For our Skeletal Mages, it's Cold Sacrificed, and it is deal 15% increased damage to vulnerable enemies when you no longer have Skeletal Mages. Shadow damage and ice damage are typically can cause vulnerabilities, so that's kind of a massive damage boost against enemies that are frozen or shadow damaged. For Golem, it's going to be Iron Sacrificed. You deal 30% increased critical strike damage. I think it's already self-explanatory why I chose that. For my skills, for my particular setup, if you were carefully looking at my armor pieces, you'll kind of understand why I've allocated my skills the way they are. Right now I have 4 points into Reap as well as Acolyte Reap. The main purpose is just for some good amount of damage reduction, because for my particular playstyle I am up in the enemy's face as much as possible. Sever, maxed out, and also Paranormal Sever is the attribute, so every 4th cast I will do Vulnerability, which helps with the build. Also, Hewed Flesh. Your damage has up to 12% chance to create a corpse at the target's location. This is going to be one of the couple ways to help generate corpses, so in order to generate corpse explosions. And also it helps with one of the glyphs abilities I have, because you don't want to detonate all the corpses all at once. Just leave a couple, so just in case you need to lure some enemies, and then detonate those corpses. Moving on. 1 point into Blood Mist. This is just your mobility, or if you just need to drop some corpses real quick to freeze some enemies, or just need to get around. Corpse Explosion, Blooded Corpse Explosion. With the fact that I'm turning the Blighted Corpse Explosion into a Darkness/Ice attack, I want it to cover a certain area whenever that happens, so I can freeze/slow/do damage over time as ice or shadow, and really get the damage going with that. 1 point into Grim Harvest, and then 3 points into Field by Death. Another multiplier for increased damage. Spiked Armor. This is kind of up in the air depending on what role you manage to get. I personally was able to manage it because of the gear I have, so I've had a little bit of wiggle room on where I want to put skill points, so I decided to do Spike Armor just in case, for a little bit of extra damage. If enemies decide to hit me, I can hit them back with ice. Moving on. Death's Embrace. Self-explanatory. When I'm close to enemy, I do increased damage and they have damage reduced. If you remember from my amulet earlier, it had +1 to all curses, so that's the only reason I was able to manage to cast a curse. Between the 2 curses, I personally choose Iron Maiden, because there is no real need for Decrepify for my setup. All the Corpse Explosions and Severs, all my Darkness attacks in general, are also pretty much going to chill the enemies with ice, because of my weapon. Moving on. Reaper's Pursuit, Crippling Darkness, Gloom, and Terror. All of them are maxed out. I'm pretty much fully utilizing all of the Darkness abilities. Want to have maximum damage with Darkness skills, which in turn will be cold skills as well. I want the higher chance of possibly proccing stuns whenever possible for even more damage. And if there happens to be someone with me who slows the enemy, or if I happen to proc a stun, then my Darkness skills/ice skills will have even more damage output. Compound Fracture. This is only because of one of my gear pieces has it. Alright, next, moving along. Standalone, maxed out. Increases damage reduction by 18%, reduces by 2% for each active minion. I'm receiving the full damage reduction bonus because I'm not using minions. Mementos Mori, sacrificing both skeleton warriors and mage warriors, or skeleton mages, increases their sacrifice bonus by 60%. So the percentages that I showed earlier from the Book of the Dead, they've been they are increased by 60%. So whatever their percentage is plus 60%, I believe, is the math. Could be wrong, so please correct me if I am wrong in that math. The ultimate is kind of, honestly, you can choose Army of the Dead or Bone Storm. I personally choose Bone Storm for extra defense. There is a little bit of wiggle room. If I wasn't running a Thorns build, I would run a Aspect, which I actually have it, but I don't want to utilize it just yet until I find something really good, is the Offensive Aspect of Ultimate Shadow. So it turns Bolt Storm into a darkness skill, and in turn it will turn that into an ice damage that I can do. The only reason I haven't used that is because I want to find a really good piece of gear before I actually use that aspect. And I actually don't have an extra copy at the moment. So that's the only reason. That's the only alteration I would have made if I wasn't running Thorns. Okay. Moving on. Passive. Shadow Blight. Every 10th time the enemy receives shadow damage from you or your minions while you're affected by Shadow Blight, they take additional 1,754 to 2,144 shadow damage. Self-explanatory. Just about every single one of my attacks is shadow damage, but because of my weapon, it's also kind of a slash ice damage. The Paragon board is kind of take it what you will and take the glyphs for what you will. Make changes if you want to, but this is what personally works for me. Obviously, for the first board, it's kind of basic, so there's not much to work with. So first glyph I chose is Sacrificial. Grants 114% bonus to all magic nodes within range. You deal 10% increased damage while you have no active minions as the bonus if I had 40 intelligence, which I do have on the board. I'm assuming the percentage bonus to all the magic nodes will increase as I level up the glyph, but I'm not too sure. Moving on. The next glyph I chose was legendary node was Wither. Your shadow damage over time effects has 5% chance to deal 50% bonus damage each time they deal damage. So that Corpse Explosion as a mist slash ice has a chance of proccing double damage as it does damage over time. Moving on. The glyph I decided to choose for this next is Scrouge. I don't even know how to pronounce it, and I probably butchered it. I can't pronounce that word properly. Right now I'm in the process of leveling up, but when I'm done, I've increased damage affected by or damage to enemies that are affected by shadow damage over time effects. So that's going to be a big win once I finally have that leveled up. Moving on. Bone Graft. Hitting enemies with bone skills increases your damage by 1% and your maximum essence by 3 for 8 seconds, stacking up to 8% increases damage and 24 maximum essence. Take it how you will. Because I'm using Corpse Explosion and shadow damage, that kind of helps each other. The second glyph, or the next glyph I decided to choose for that is Gravekeeper. Grant 95% bonus to all rare nodes within range. You deal 2% increased damage up to 12% for every close corpse. So, more corpses around me, more damage I do. Hence the reason it's not always wise to explode all the corpses at once, but you'll be generating a lot of corpses if you watch my previous gameplay. Moving on. Right now I have Flesh Eater, Paragon. Consuming 5 corpses grants 40% increased damage for 6 seconds. So, obviously, with all the corpses I'm consuming with Corpse Explosion, that will also give me the Flesh Eater to proc, therefore increasing more damage. I have not chosen a 4th glyph to use just yet, only because I'm not at that level yet. For me personally, at this point in time, when I unlock this node, it will be at level 79 when I actually have it unlocked. Keep in mind, this is still a work in progress build, and I am sorry that this has been long-winded, but this is pretty much the setup I've chosen, and it seems to be working so far. More to follow on how far I'm able to push to the rifts. Currently, I am Nightmare Rift 24, but that's only because I'm kind of hesitant, because in the past I've been struggling to get past certain levels. And then there's obviously to take consideration within recent patches of buffing some things for the better. So next time you catch on the live stream, I may be pushing higher than what I say that I'm pushing in this video, maybe even further. And then there'll probably be an update on what glyph I choose next, on how it will help my build. Take care now, and bye-bye then.